How's it going, people? I'm BR, I hate feds, and this is the B.R Hates Feds Show. Or it's possibly also the Art and War podcast, depending on where you're listening from. But to get some house cleaning out of the way, Mitch and Nathan, they're hardworking lads, but we didn't have a guest this week. It all just fell through, and so no episode happened. And they'll be back next week, but this week I'll be taking over the show. For the Art and War guys, I'm the producer of the show, and I was planning on having my guest here coming on just my show, but now it's going to be both. All right. Anywho, here's my long ass intro.
Well, I don't feel like I'm a part of the everyday American society, and I don't want to be, let me tell you. Okay? I do my damnedest to tear it down.
A governor's task force has determined that punk rockers are society's new subversives and must be treated as such.
Taxation is theft.
Oh! God damn it, motherfucker!
We're talking peace, love, and honor. These governments of this world are coming to an end.
The FBI is feeling the heat.
Your own conscience, your own morality, your own decision, your own self. You alone can do it. There is no authority but yourself.
The B.R Hates Feds Show. Welcome to the rice fields, motherfuckers.
So joining me today is Reaper11, tactics, street smarts, and survivability guide writer extraordinaire. Thank you for joining me, man.
Pleasure to be on. I'll make sure to keep my autism as a minimal today.
No need. We can dial it up. Let's kick it up to 11.
Absolutely no limits there.
Yeah, it's kind of the brand at this point. Nathan has firmly forced it into the center stage, which I love. But
it's working out really well.
Yes, I am shocked by and slightly worried by the eager audience feedback. But I'll work with it. Whatever, numbers are numbers. But before we go down any rabbit holes, I wanted to get into a little bit of detail about yourself. Like, how did you get into the world of spreading kind of tactic knowledge and survivability knowledge to a primarily civilian audience, and what got you into this stuff?
I'd really say it started initially with moving out on my own, and then buying my first rifles, and then just learning how much I sucked at shooting. Transitioned from there, really focusing in on that. And as I develop and I kind of watch current events and how things deteriorate a couple of years ago, I'm noticing that there's a lack of information that I wanted to know, specifically like small unit stuff, sniper stuff, like fieldcraft. And I really just went headfirst into trying to find that information. Couldn't find it, on the social media scene. So I basically looked elsewhere, started buying my first field manuals, reading into those, watching YouTube videos. And as I found, some of the information was not really cultivated for the civilian mindset and the civilian background. I really just kind of made it my mission to approach this like professional athletes do, and that they spend 80 to 90% of their time studying film and reading playbooks and putting time down off the field and out of the practice zone and into more like the book side of things and studying. And then just basically applied those skills to learning this stuff. And, I'm dozens and dozens of, field manuals in, I've learned from guys, talk with guys, practice with guys, this craft. And as COVID kind of set in, you're watching everything really deteriorate. I needed an outlet, not just for shouting into the void, about politics and current events, but also as I started to do that, and really what my initial first page was just really starting to stand on a soapbox and kind of propose liberty using more historical examples. For me, it was piracy. And, because piracy basically kicked off the American Revolution, decades prior. And as you see, even during the American Revolution with guys like John Paul Jones, really just embodying liberty in its purest form of just like, let me live my life and let me determine my future without outside input. And I was really pushing that. And at the same time, I was kind of really getting the gears rolling with the small unit stuff and conflict as a whole. And I keep seeing that there's nothing popping up on Instagram. And I finally just lost it. And I said, cool, I'm going to cover some stuff that I've learned that people aren't talking about that could really amplify people's knowledge or really kind of bang for your buck type information. So moving all that fluff you see from like field manuals and stuff and really condensing, dozens of after action reports, dozens of interviews, firsthand accounts, and like condensing as much as possible and just saying, hey, here's something really simple. It looks complicated on the outside, but it's actually really simple. And take that, and now you have this knowledge that you could spread with others, and it makes yourself more capable to defend yourself, your liberties, and your values. And that started to really take off. Guys were really appreciating that because it's like it's just dumbing down information and opening them up to a realm they've not been exposed to. Then got banned for saying some mean words to some Nazis, and I guess Mark did not like that.
He's oddly on their side.
Really interesting.
No, I got my last ban was because I called Kamala Harris a cop, which is true.
It's not wrong.
But no, I love all that. Like furthering and spreading that knowledge to a civilian audience is so important, and a lot of kind of what got me into it into the whole Instagram thing as well, because I'd done like the briefest bit of British Army officer training, and I was like, when you compare even very, very, very rudimentary small unit tactics to kind of the knowledge set of the average Second Amendment supporter in America, unfortunately, it's really fucking abysmal how capable the average person is compared to, what a Minuteman is supposed to be, or what a civilian rifleman was intended to be, with the whole idea of the Second Amendment and an armed populace. So I'm thankful that we're at a point in the culture where everyone's like, oh, we really need to take that back, and pretty aggressively too. Do you think the cross-section of liberty and politics is something that's kind of galvanized the interest in this, or do you think it's kind of we're just shouting from our little echo chamber and there's a lot more interest in this?
I'd say you get 2 points. One, you have a lot of guys pushing this and normalizing this, and that is playing a huge part in all this because it's like one guy joins up and now he spreads this to one guy or two guys, and now they're in, and it starts to become viral. You really get a logarithmic curve where it gets starts out slow, gets really steep, then hits saturation and levels off. Yeah. And then as well as people reacting on their own and starting to wake up to the room temperature and understanding that no one is coming to save them. And that message becomes easier and easier to pitch to people every day.
Yeah, ain't that the fucking truth?
Right? And like I have people who I'm neighbors with and have talked with who 2 years ago would have been extremely hesitant to even go shooting, and now it's just like, hey, you guys want to go out? And you take them out and they're like, oh, I want to buy one of these. It's like, cool, sweet, there's two more proponents, so that even if they weren't like, hey, everyone needs to buy machine guns, they're at least somewhat bought in because they have one. They can understand that a lot of the rhetoric is rhetoric, and that some of the people who talk about these instruments in a way in which we should give them up to a territorial monopoly and use of force, they realize that information is incorrect, and that the average gun owner is pretty freaking normal.
Yeah. Have you brought anyone from that mindset of being like a new gun owner all the way to like, hey, you should probably study some like small unit tactics and stuff? Or is that more a thing you do in your online kind of space?
Both. I have some friends who, when they started out, were just into the gun scene, and then we started training together and really working out more organizational stuff. And it was really good to see them grow and myself grow with them, and just figuring where our flaws were and just create, that family type environment where we can really trust each other with our backs, as well as more and more, like for my page, I very rarely see, guns and gear comments, and more like, hey, I'm having this issue when I'm training guys. How do I finish, the assault through? Or more just asking for, life advice or advice for getting people into this, which is, I expect. As well as guys asking more, tough questions that can't necessarily be answered unless you're in that moment. And that's really inspiring to see.
No, seriously, like giving people kind of a little bit more confidence to maybe go out and, I mean, God, it's it sounds a little bit sad when you have to walk back the idea of certain things that need to be trained or practiced, but it's just kind of a sign of the state of where we're at in terms of where the average American and especially the American gun owners kind of skill set is. And sadly, if you talk about even cold camping to a whole lot of gun owners, they're like, wait, we're going to be out in the woods without a fire all night? What if it gets cold? You're like, oh Jesus, oh guys, we have so much to do. Bless your hearts. But I'm glad people are finally, I don't want to say being humbled. They are in certain cases, but a lot more people are becoming switched on while it's still safe to, stumble into this stuff and be like, oh my God, I'm so behind.
Yeah. I did a post on what you kind of talked about. It was called Day Zero Idiots. And it's,
Yeah.
it hits a lot on that of you have these guys who don't necessarily have any grounding in reality. And you see that in any initial conflict anywhere. I use Lebanon or Iraq as a great example of you have all these guys running into the streets with AKs, taking pot shots at Marines, and they get their brains blown out. And after a while, you're left with all these guys who are just doing this dumb stuff, like fighting from their house, and it's like, yeah, everyone could track you down and figure out that's your house, and now it's leveled with a drone. But you see that same mentality here, and it is dying. But you get guys who are like, yeah, I'm just gonna return home for supper at 7, get a nice 8 hours of sleep, pop up in the morning, and then we'll just run out in the street, find the bad guys, and come home again.
Yep. I'm going to choose the perfect rifle for my day of work, and I'm going to come home to my big old stack of ammunition, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and, I don't understand it. It's really fantasy. If you got guys who are like, oh, I can just, God, I heard this one. I can just sit in a chair with a machine gun and shoot down Antifa. Like, bro, what are you talking about?
It's like, dude, day 90 of the Civil War, you're going to be looking for the Antifa kids and like making plans together to go and raid Dick's Sporting Goods because you've both run out of water filters.
You're not even going to make it to the fight because you're 300 pounds. You're going to die of a heart attack.
there is always that. You're going to be asking the Chaz kids if they can maybe get one of their potted plant potatoes together for you. Like, please, I need some starch. I'm dying.
I'll trade you 5 Funko Pops for.
There's so much of that, and I'm glad that we're maturing at a very rapid rate. And like you said, it's very much, unfortunately, due to the room temperature. But I do wonder what the culture would look like if things weren't clearly getting worse and a little bit more unstable everywhere. If we would still be trapped in this kind of global war on terror hangover where it's still very much, blood makes the grass grow and rah rah, I'm a Spartan warrior because I own a rifle without, I own one AR. I've got 2 mags for it, 500 rounds, no sling, no light, maybe a sight mark on it. But, I'm bought into that warrior culture. I'm a gun owner. I've got, it's such a strange juxtaposition between those guys who, like, Day Zero Idiot. That guy is a loot drop, and probably not a very good one.
No, but it'll keep the homies armed up.
Yeah, like, oh, hey, your bolt just busted, didn't it? Grab his.
We call it BRP, biological resupply point.
Oh fuck! But I don't know. It's what do they say? I guess they say the meek will inherit the earth, but I guess it's going to be the bookworms who've actually spent their time studying. And obviously there is a balance between burying yourself in paperback after paperback, digesting like army field manuals and all the rest of it. But there is a hell of a difference between someone who considers that stuff and is doing the research and also trying to put it to practice in the field, and someone who is, their personality is, I am a 2A guy, and they have never considered any of that. And it's terrifying to me that we could have been castrated so viciously to get to a point where those guys, they've got all of the gung-ho they need, but none of the ability or even the awareness to realize actually how combat ineffective they are.
Yeah, they can barely do an up drill, let alone fire maneuver. The guy's never heard of an LDA. He thinks it's the Latino Diabetes Association or something.
Can they get diabetes?
I have no idea.
But no, I'm glad that more and more pages like yourself are emerging, and it's all well and good to be like, hey, go and read the Ranger Handbook, and then you chuck that in the lap of I mean, Christ, even myself, I'll look at it and be like, all right, a lot of this is just fucky fluff that we don't really need. A lot of acronyms and all sorts of bullshit that's not going to translate very well if you read it out in the field with a group of guys. So it's nice to see that there's clearly like a demand for it from all the accounts popping up, but also people with the ability, they don't have to be former SEAL or Green Beret or Boy Scout or whatever it is. They can read this stuff and then translate it for the wider audience, and I'm thankful that exists in the culture.
Yeah, and it's happening more and more. You're seeing dozens and dozens each day of more pages getting into this, and whether they completely walk the walk or talk the talk, kind of irrelevant, makes it perceived as more saturated within the culture, and that just starts to take off from there. You have one guy and he exposes his buddies to this who would normally be hesitant, but now he's making this page, so they kind of get into it, and now they do a page, right?
Oh yeah, it's Hydra effect.
Exactly, right? And that is the point, is to saturate this so much you can't really drown it out of the noise, because the noise from them becomes too loud, and then you just make it the common thing where it's weird to not know that.
Yeah.
And obviously you have the interculture and intraculture, but like interculture now, it's starting to become weird to not even remotely go out with a pack and do field craft. Hopefully we can do that too, where more guys can view it weird to not do like bounding drills and just basic stuff like that. But we'll get there.
Oh, we most certainly are. Like more and more, I'll go out, and more people will be coming out and joining us on a ruck or a range day or whatever it is. And so many people, even if they're like very new to this stuff, like they've just got their first AR and it's just about ready to do some basic like bounding or whatever it is, there's such an enthusiasm and clear, like they know it's important, they know nothing, but they that's a way better spot than being like, I am a badass American warrior, like you're gonna be a day zero idiot.
Molan labia.
Melon labia.
This episode is brought to you by Advanced Warfighting Solutions. Advanced Warfighting Solutions, they have quite literally everything that you need to be a lethal, super cool Instagram operator, and also just a super cool actual operator, or just a super cool civilian, or just whatever the fuck you want. They have battle belts, plate carriers, assault packs, pretty much anything nylon, they got it. So be sure to check them out. Use code ARTMORE10 on an SMU war belt, and you'll save some money. We don't get any kickback, you just save money. Huge thank you to them for supporting the show.
How's it going, lads and ladies? I'm BR, producer of the show, here to take a quick break to tell you about our Patreon. Not only do we want to continue improving the quality of what we can do here on Art and War, but we want to push what we do all over at Seaburn Art, from the guides to pursuing video content and the lofty goal of having a space for our team to make it all happen, and the Patreon helps us get after it. But what's in it for you? Our Patreon subscribers enjoy 5 different tiers of exclusive perks, ranging from all of the content the lads would post on a pre-Zuckerberg Instagram, downloadable high-resolution guides and targets including Redcoats, Skinwalkers, John Harvey Kellogg, World Economic Forum cult leaders, and more. Also, behind-the-scenes info like Nathan's personal art, spicy memes, and at our highest tier, get monthly art commissions created by Nathan himself. You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description at patreon.com/SeaburnArt or in the Seaburn Art page's bio on Instagram. Now let's get back to the show.
No, it's great. You see those guys who are just new popping in, they got that eager smile on their face, but they're they're real with themselves and they're open to information and being told that they're wrong and it's okay to be wrong. I need to make sure I maintain that as well. That goes for anyone, but
No,
like
absolutely.
they basically check their ego at the door, and that is like the greatest thing ever because they just become a sponge for information, and they start spouting that information off to other people. It keeps spreading and spreading and spreading, and now eventually, years later, you practically genocide proofed the United States of America, and it starts spreading to other countries. And it becomes
Yes.
normalized for them to do stuff. Basically, you create this viral effect that just takes a little longer. It's really cool to watch. Like the amount of foreign followers I have is startling, and like they're like, "Hey, I don't have a gun, but I want to put this stuff into practice."
Yeah, dude.
Here's a hide site I made in an apartment. I'm like, wow, that's pretty stellar, man.
No, seriously. Like I've had people from South America, South Korea, like all over Europe message and be like, same exact thing. Like, hey, I don't have a gun, but how about some bushcraft stuff? Maybe rocking with a pack. And like Redbeard said something. Redbeard Tactical. He posted something a little while ago in his story saying about how civilians all over the place, not just the U.S., should probably have some idea of how to function like a crew-served weapon or like MGs and stuff that we can't necessarily get today. But who fucking knows when we're gonna become Syria?
Exactly. I actually want to make a post on that as well, just propagating that. Hey man, no shit you don't even have. Like I don't have an AK, but I better damn well know how to like at least field strip one.
Seriously.
I better know where the controls on every modern servers platform are because they're pretty much all the same. And just like understanding how to use equipment, like vehicles and stuff, and how they work, because you never know, you might come across one and need to use it. Like it'd be useful to know how to drive stick, right? It'd be useful to know how to turn on a Humvee, or useful to know how to use like a PKM or something. The situation may present itself. It may seem very unlikely now, but the future holds many unknowns.
Yeah, and that exact kind of mindset, that not just prepper, but kind of no one's coming to help, man. Like you're the only one who's going to be there to figure it out. That mindset perforating the culture more and more. And also what you said a minute ago about there kind of being this openness to being like, I know nothing and I need to learn stuff, please help, is so much better than where we were at just a few years ago, where it was very much like, if you don't come to the table with, SF kind of mentality and knowledge, like, well, you're on your own, you're fucked. It's all very exclusive and all very locked down, and especially with the culture of mill and law enforcement only classes, that is getting shat upon heavily now. It's like, why don't you want American civilians to know potentially life-saving stuff, man? What the fuck's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, and it's gotten to the point where like now the LE classes are switching around to like less shooting and more like dealing with situations they deal with on the job, is what I've seen and noticed. And it's much different from like, hey, here's this tactical stuff we're going to cover, but only for you guys. It's much more like job oriented is what I've seen. But yeah, like the no one's coming to save you mentality perforates even within like these guys who are like perceived as experts. For example, I talk with a lot of the guys like Operator, Nickus Nix, Redbeard, and like other guys like that. Like, hey, I have this question, I don't have a freaking answer. Like, I need some help. And they may not have answers either. It might just be a subjective kind of decision, right? And everyone's learning. Like, you're not going to get to the point where you're never not learning, and if you do, like, you're doing something completely wrong.
Absolutely.
It's that Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, that's something a lot of young guys definitely, like, if you're 18, 19, whatever it is, you're military age and you've thankfully turned down the military for something a bit more fulfilling, and you're wondering like, oh fuck, how do I get all of this knowledge? That is the right mindset, as opposed to like, I need to have it all spoon-fed to me and I need to know it all now and I need to go and do all the fast guy shit. It's great to be operating from a point of self-aware ignorance and being like, okay, I have knowledge to pursue, rather than, okay, I think I've got it all, because you don't. I think all of us will be old and gray and being like, all right, what to read on next?
You know what your capabilities are and aren't, right? You're very rule with that. So like if you have to make for example, a 500-meter shot, and you're like, hey, I've never shot to even 200. You know your chances are unlikely, rather than being the guy who has all the confidence in the world but none of the skill to back it up.
Yeah, being in a situation where you have to make like a 500-yard shot, whatever it is, first shot, and you're like, it's never gonna happen. Like that's a hell of a lot better than being relied on to take that shot and just being, all bravado about it.
Yeah, exactly. Even like knowing your equipment as well. You get some guys like it's still getting ironed out. Like it's not as big a deal as I used to see, but like, hey, my equipment's just as good. Then you put them through like a course of breaking contact, and now their gun's so hot, like the bolt sheared off.
Oh, those failures are beautiful when they happen during training. Because you're like, thank fuck that happened right now, so we can all laugh about it and point and be like, hey, let's fix that, buddy, rather than, oh, well, he's dead. Fuck, he's just dead weight for me now. Like the whole team's fucked because he didn't know what he was doing, or didn't have the right equipment, or hadn't put it through any hard conditions. Like we had a couple
rack,
guys.
James, tap rack.
Yeah, it's in half. What the fuck do you mean? But we had a couple guys. It was like a very, very minor thing. Very, capable guys who've military experience and everything. But we were out on a desert rock. I think I talked about this last episode, so sorry guys for the repeat. But they came out for a desert rock and had I think like Ultimas and like bands on or some shit out in the desert, and whew, they had some rough times. We were doing a little like night patrol, and just I can't imagine. I heard a lot of stumbling behind me, bless them.
Yeah, great shoe, not great if you've ever done like a 12-mile rock. That will eat you alive. Your knees will be stabbing you in the face.
Yeah, they would be tearing up maybe on a ship, but not the desert with a bunch of hills and rocks and loose gravel and shit. They were eating it a little bit, but bless them. It happened in a inconsequential situation, and they're like, okay, well, I know this, and this. This kit was fucked up and messing me up. Yeah, we're gonna correct that.
Yeah, it's so much better than guys will get this new piece of gear, like a backpack, and they'll load it up, and they'll be like, I can't strip this apart because it's good the way it is, but they don't really know, and they just in reality they're scared to test it out. I'm seeing that get shoved away, and telling guys like, hey, it's okay to fuck up, like don't feel bad. It probably won't work the first time you pack your rock. You'll probably have to play around with it a couple dozen times before you really understand how to do those things with any pack you get. Or
dude,
you set up and you can't reach your compass or whatever, right?
Yeah, I wanted to join in the Americans because everyone seems to have such a love for the Alice pack, so I bought one just for funsies. It damn near fucking killed me. Holy shit.
Oh, do tell.
I just, for whatever reason, like, I guess British packs are a little bit different. I don't think I'd ever used an external frame pack. I'd only used internal frames. That's what all like British Bergens are. And I don't know. I was also trying to be cute because I didn't have those core ice plates yet. So I had a Camelback rigged up, like jerry rigged into the frame to cool my back as I was hiking. I was like, oh yeah, that'll work. It was just a fucking mess, dude. It was one of the roughest rocks of my life, and I was just eating shit and clearly being, like a hassle for the team. And just because I was adjusting it and it was killing me and all that kind of thing. So, but again, happened on an inconsequential, weekend trip. No one died. I just got embarrassed and gassed, and that's perfect.
Now, just imagine the guys who think they don't need a pack going out with like a JanSport.
Bless them. 3 mags in a canteen.
Maybe a bivvy if they're lucky.
Yeah, like, no. I won't be out all night. I'll be fine. Okay, man. Okay.
I hear the drone flying overhead already.
It was nice knowing you. Don't text this number again.
CIA wants to know your location.
Oh my god, I could get into tracking all that. kids, buy a Faraday bag, please. A little Faraday bag for your phone. That's my PSA for the day. The government knows when you masturbate, but they do. So I wanted to get into kind of your mission statement, which I feel is perhaps a little bit spicy. Like, for a lot of people would hear what we're talking about now and be like, this is great, I love it, I love where this is going. But then if they perhaps read your mission statement on your, or what I'm calling your mission statement, kind of your bio on Instagram, they might then have, that then the FUD might creep in. So for those who haven't read it, demystifying guerrillas, marksmen, and snipers to enable laymen to defend their homeland effectively. So guerrillas, marksmen, and snipers, that sounds kind of insurgenty, that speaking from the mind of like someone who's, because I just saw this on Pacific Northwest Guerrillas post. He was saying about he posted some comment from a veteran saying like, what are you guys doing preparing for, the presumption is always civil war, but unrest, whatever it might be, like, you guys are going against our oath to the Constitution. It's like, buddy, you don't understand what the fuck you signed up for at that point. Like,
oh my god, I need to teach them a lesson. John Paul Jones, Francis Marion. Francis Marion basically pioneering modern guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, that's the thing that so many Second Amendment people. I'm really bashing them today, but it's out of love. But like the average Second Amendment person, when you think of guerrillas and kind of like pretty brutal, not one standard fighting force against another, but when it's an insurgency of marksmen and snipers taking pot shots at people and fucking off, a lot of guys who are kind of Second Amendment types might be like, that's a very dishonorable way to fight, or whatever. It's like, dude, that is how this country was built.
Exactly. You got guys, for example, with the American muskets had ranges of 100 to 300 yards compared to the English blunderbusses, which are really only shotgun range, 25, 50. And these guys would just take pot shots, run down the road, wait for them to come back, take another pot shot, run down the road, keep doing it. And you see this concept being pushed over and over and over. And what you have is an somewhat effective strategy for how someone with lesser numbers and skills can effectively put an enemy with much greater power and reach, essentially paralyze them, right?
Yeah.
You see this in Afghanistan. There's some guys out there who'll tell you there's, tally taking shots at 100, and these guys will follow their standard fighter maneuver plan. So they'll basically start to maneuver on where they thought that sniper was. Now they're taking pot shots from a second sniper. And now you have these talking snipers going back and forth. And you have 100-man element being pinned down.
Yeah, by two 16-year-olds in sandals.
Shooting 1942 Lee Enfields.
Yep.
And not that someone should do that in that situation, but like it can be done and has been done. And that's where I started to focus in on what is the most force multiplying person with an unconventional force, and it's the sniper. Sure, like a typical sniper does 90% observation and recording and 10% shooting, right? But from the combat perspective of the unconventional soldier, he can really amplify his skills by minimizing his rounds sent down range and just being very precise with his targeting. And that's kind of what my strategy was looking at how can I give people the tools that makes them as competent as possible to defend themselves from an outside force that wants to wipe them off the face of the earth. And I said, the sniper, right? Because I can minimize my labor input, minimize my round sit down range, and somewhat minimize my skill needed to project power. And you have guys taking pot shots at platoon company size elements and keeping them at bay for 30 cents a round, right?
Yeah, like the sniper, if you were trying to, as we've talked about, and I really like the term genocide proof is cropping up more and more. I saw T-Rex Arms use it recently. But genocide proof is 100% what it is. And if you are, the boot trying to stomp on someone's neck, and as you go to round up the distance into boxcars, you're taking, you don't know if your officers or your leadership are going to take a round as you do that. That's going to really stifle your efforts. And that could be, like a handful of dudes in a city could hold the whole fucking place down. And just, you never know if it's going to be safe to, perform your genocidal operations and shit in the city. You're like, we might be here at any point with, and so it's interesting. A lot of people are, I don't know, moving into kind of what does a modern civilian unit look like? Like, there's been a little bit of discussion about kind of, support weapons and marksmen and all of that kind of thing, what we can use to supplement what a civilian, setup would look like. But focusing in on the marksmen and snipers is interesting. I personally, I hadn't really thought about it as much, disappointingly, but no, I really like that approach.
So there was two reasons for more of the marksman approach as well, and that was looking at the lack of fully automatic and belt-fed weapons within the civilian populace. And I really wanted an answer to this 2 years ago, and I was looking for how groups have supplemented the lack of full auto capability, and it came down to the marksman of giving a higher range rifle or higher power rifle and have them pick off isolated or important targets. I noticed the Chechens did this during their first and second conflict. If they'd replace their, they didn't have like the PKMs or anything like that. They just used more SVD rifles and basically just have separate teams and just pick off optics, leaders, and any specialist weapons to the Russian side. Now you have groups that are completely cut off at the neck, no leadership there, and basically have no force multiplying weapons within their capability. The second part came down to standoff range. If my enemy is capable of accurate shots out to 300, why shouldn't I start learning how to shoot to 400 or 500 and beyond? That way I can put myself out of standoff range, and now I'm shooting accurate rounds rather than just kind of lobbing them into no man's land.
Yeah, and that's going to be a hell of a lot better for, logistics and resources. Like, that's a hell of a lot less bullets you're putting down compared to a support weapon. And if you're an inferior fighting force, that's less to carry, less to source, all the rest of it.
Just better bang for buck.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that full auto weapons shouldn't be there. It's just like, if you don't have them, like, this is a great way to apply a strategy to conflict, right? Just put guys out of standoff range. Just my 2 cents.
No, I love it. And I've seen like a few pages kind of getting into that more and more, and also kind of treading not necessarily away from small unit tactics, but more into kind of what would be a more kind of sensible investment in terms of strategies to make a civilian rifleman useful in the kind of modern environment. Like I think it's Covert Arms, the page, where you're seeing guys run around with like real simple civilian bags and high vis vests, and no one blinks twice at them, and white vans with a tripod set up in the back and all that kind of stuff. And kind of it's interesting to see, because we've seen the last few wars have been a vastly superior technology-wise fighting force against a technologically dated fighting force, and we're kind of seeing the same thing in Ukraine. So there hasn't been much reference for what a conflict would look like in the quote-unquote first world. We're steadily devolving from that, but what that's going to look like if a conflict like Syria broke out in our streets.
It's definitely concerning just that we even have to be there, but seeing guys break out into more of the scenario planning and more of into the, I'd say, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like problem solving,
definitely. Some of the neglected portions of like actual mission planning and saying like, hey, I have this scenario. How would I go about doing this? And maybe it's not fully planned out, but seeing with guys, shooting out of their vehicles and just trying new stuff, taking from other groups and fighters who've done this, how would they do this? How would they get comfortable doing this? Could they sneak into a random apartment complex and set up an observation post? Is that possible for them? A lot more higher level thinking.
Yeah. It's funny the kind of ideas and techniques that come about when instead of like grossly inflated DoD budget, you just have brains and kind of everyday items and what's immediately accessible to you to make do. And obviously, like the average person's amount of monetary resources. It makes a big fucking difference, but you still see solutions that would probably give the Pentagon and all of their spending and research and decades of time a run for their money, which is what makes insurgents so effective in the first place.
Yeah, the ability to innovate cannot be understated. If you look at like the Lebanon War, they had all their communications knocked out by the government. So what they did was took their FM alarm clocks and inserted a couple parts and basically turned them into two-way radios.
Fucking hell.
Right? You have this innovation.
80% ham radios.
Exactly. You see guys, the cable gets pulled by the government. And now they reverse engineer their satellite dishes and pump out their own TV. And people start tuning in, and you essentially have an idea that formants, and it can't be quashed because you can't just throw guns and boots at it and stomp it out, right? People are pissed off for a reason.
Yeah.
You have to address that reason. You can't just say, no, you're wrong. La, 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 la. Also, here's some, boots with guns. We're going to quelch you. You're really just saying they're right and that you're scared and you can't address their issues.
Immediately, that moment when the cops were walking through an American city with those pepper paintball guns and that video just instantly came to mind. Like, get back inside and light them up. Like, right. Oh my god, like we're just gonna solve the problem with a boot.
But, it doesn't work. It never has worked.
We're gonna try it again, buddy.
Right.
One more time for democracy. Come on now.
Big Oil's got this one.
Yeah, I thought it was Big Pharma. Who's getting the tab?
Oh gosh.
should we just put our cards in the tub and play roulette?
Military industrial complex comes out of left field, just slams his black metal Amex on the table. It's like, don't worry, I got
it. I got this one, kids. Don't worry. Been making money longer than all of you motherfuckers. All right, so something that I really love that you've done is the skill tree. So that's something I wanted to touch on a little bit because as we've been touching on, so many people are still getting into this, but even to me, I'm still fucking overwhelmed. I don't know about you, but like every time, just as we were talking about, every time I'm like, all right, I'm getting a good grasp on these, I feel pretty confident to teach, one or two things, help compound that knowledge for myself, help spread it, and then I'll just open a door to a whole new thing, and I'm like, I'm a fucking idiot. But this skill tree this post of yours is a wonderful way to get people started. But what kind of made you set that up?
So it was a big idea of how can I best give guys the tools and direction they need so they can take off themselves and don't need outside input. And looking at you're going to see a lot more projects like that from here on out of how can it's a very like commander's day way of looking at things of how can I give guys the tools and knowledge they need so they can kind of take off on their own journey and don't really need to focus on the low brain stuff. They can focus on the higher level activities, right? So like giving guys like an op ord format is a great example of that, operations order, so they can plan and don't have to focus on what should they plan. They can just like, oh, hey, there's a template. This works. We'll take this out because it doesn't apply to us. We'll add this because it does apply to us. And now they don't have to focus on the nitty gritty. They can just focus on their energies better. And the skill tree was a project to target that specifically, in that guys are getting flooded with all these different topics they need to cover, and they get too overwhelmed and they don't know where to start, so they don't start at all. And this says like, hey, here are skills you definitely need, right, at different levels of leadership. And this will allow you to say, oh, hey, I could check this box off. I understand this topic enough. Maybe it's time to better divert my energy. And you can kind of stick with the Proteo principle of 20% of your effort accomplishes 80% of your goal.
Mm.
And it just allows for more efficiencies and a somewhat standardized list. This list was created with Redbeard, Nick, an operator. I appreciate them for helping with this. And we basically create a project that gives guys 3 levels of experience. A private, your boot, gives them the tools and direction towards knowledge that they would need at a very base. No questions asked, no variation in that. Like, they need these skills and to be able to do this. And then taking that a step further to adding leadership and planning into that with like NCO levels of, hey, now you got 2 to 4 guys below you. How do you start to organize them? What are some things you need to start looking into? And then taking that even a step farther into like an officer level of, hey, now you not only have to do everything below you, but you have to be like a good people person, a good speaker. You have to address things that aren't tactical at all, right? You're going to have to essentially manage different staff levels, guys who have different skills, not just guys who can hold a gun, but guys who can collect intelligence, guys who can farm, and guys who can transport stuff, and understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and basically be responsible for a lot more people than yourself.
Yeah.
Get a very top-down perspective of the entire processes that are going at hand, and not just focusing on the things that are straight ahead of you, but looking, a year or 5 years down the road.
Yeah. I love it, dude. It's such a good document that you guys put together, because when I know guys who've been doing this for, a decade or longer. I know guys have been doing it, 6 months, and everyone's, it's such a mixed ability group in terms of in like the civilian world when you're going out and training with guys, and it's wonderful for that. But also, it's so hard to kind of get an idea of, on an individual level, if you're out training with a bunch of new guys, it's like, am I like slowing down? Is there anything I could be building on myself, to help me and to help these guys in terms of advancing myself, so I'm not just stagnating and kind of getting everyone to my level but still developing. And then there's also times where you'll be with a very high speed group of guys, and you're like, there's a lot between me and you, and I have no idea what the fuck it is, because it seems like just an insurmountable thing. But this list is, I think, what a lot of people need. So this is going out on 2 podcasts. So if you're listening, check out Reaper 11 Actual, and make sure you check out the skill tree post. Because if you're terrified of starting, or just really wondering what it looks like, what the journey looks like, this is a very good idea of kind of, I guess, really what kind of the militia was all about, like from a very, I don't want to say like academic kind of point, but it's just very well put together and a very well-rounded idea of what an individual should be capable of if they're serious about this stuff.
Exactly. Just make sure they're competent enough in enough areas to where, one, you could be put with a different group if you've never worked with before,
Yes.
and they have a standard to hold you to, of like, you don't know how to use a compass, but you focused on your long range shooting. Like, that's great, but you can't navigate now. So making sure you're a well-rounded individual, and that allows you to be plug and play with different groups, and allows you to handle a variety of situations, so you're not just a one-trick pony.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being the guy who like is just the cook, and you kind of lean on that, is, not hurting or not helping anyone, but actually pushing yourself and being like, damn, I really wish I could help out with the radios more, or I wish I wasn't just using this as an excuse to kind of get out of those duties, which I'm sure all of us have done at some point, and been like, fuck, if I end up doing that, I'm going to screw everyone over.
Yeah, and it's just holding yourself to those expectations of not getting too deep in the ruts with any one subject, right? You should be well-rounded no matter what specialization you're going to choose, right? If you're going to be that cook or that farmer, great. That's awesome, stellar. Go for it. I encourage you. But you should be well-rounded in these skills as well, right? Everyone is a rifleman. Doesn't mean that is your job, but you should be expected to perform those duties should it be needed. Whether it's the Los Zetas cartel running into your town, or if it's the Russian army coming into your town. You should be ready to take them on, and not just some helpless soy jack hiding behind his wife, hoping that some Superman great man comes to save you, because guess what? No one's coming to save your ass.
100%. On a lighter topic, another thing that I really love amongst your guides was the hobo signs, I think it was.
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
Like, stuff like that is, I think, a really unique part of what you do with your guides is kind of not just the combination of, like, we're just translating the Ranger Handbook, but stuff like that that's kind of applicable, especially if we're talking about kind of you know, potentially an American conflict or a more Western conflict where, there are cultural things that we know about that we can apply, to the real world and can put to use. And stuff as simple as that, like hobo marks, and kind of have an idea of, if there is actually, I haven't seen any where I'm at. I've been looking when I've been doing any urban exploration or in a rough part of town, but I don't know. I guess it's not a thing out here. But if it was, great knowledge to have.
Look at it this way. Take it from like a broader perspective of how do I communicate without being present? And that allows you a way to do it to where it can either be cryptic and no one knows what you're saying, or B, it could be a line on a mail post on the sidewalk or any building. It's just like a graffiti single line, and that could tell your boys, hey, I had to leave because of danger. Like there was a riot down my street or something. And now guys can communicate with you or have some plan rather than you just running outside with your hair on fire and no one knows where you're at and there's no coordination whatsoever. It's thinking through that pace plan.
Yeah, the idea of establishing a system with your family too, like, when I'm sure anyone who's run through those kind of doomsday scenarios of, I have to get off the X and just bolt, and it's like there was a show on in the UK for the longest time about people who would run from, essentially, I think they were actually like law enforcement. They had like a team of, I don't know if they were former or current or whatever it was, but they were like this basically 1984 Big Brother tracking kind of cops, and they would hunt like volunteers, and they had to evade these people to win money. And the thing, no matter how skilled, like these could be ex-Marines or like, former private investigators who knew all the fucking tricks to be slippery, what would always fuck them up was communicating back with their family. They would always bust and fucking call them, and, that would be it. Fuck themselves. And I'm like, that was on a fucking show when they were competing for money on TV and there was no danger. So imagine people in a real conflict where they have to fuck off, and people are separated from loved ones like that, and it's a dangerous situation. Stuff like this is fantastic.
It's very humbling to think about those scenarios because you realize how unprepared you are.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like I have many areas I need to hit. I'm not gonna gloat and say otherwise. Like I have many areas I need to hit. And thinking of those scenarios of how do you plan for this, right? It allows you some confidence and safety. Like it's like having a jumper kit, like those batteries that you could re-jump your car with.
Yeah.
Like having one of those, or like just being prepared in general. Like you have some confidence about you because you know that any random situation out there you could handle pretty well. For example, like having a fallback plan in case there's violence, a fire, earthquake, great flood or something like that. You can know, hey, this is where I need to look for my family. If I go there, they're not there, then I'll check the second point. But yeah, just having that planning and forward thinking.
Yeah, we're creatures of anxiety. It's how we've lived this long, and fortunately, we developed our brains a little bit more so we can have contingency plans to answer that anxiety. And that's, if you have the ability and resources to build those contingency plans and make sure they're set. If you're like me, and I assume how you are and how many of our listeners are, and just very, very prepper minded and very alert and concerned about the situation of the world and all that kind of thing, potentialities. It's when you get some decent water storage set aside, or a good 3 months of food stocked away. Like introducing my girlfriend to prepping. When I first showed her that idea, like when the lockdowns first started, and it sounded like they were gonna send in the fucking guard and all the rest of it, and stuff, the shelves were empty. Instantly, she understood kind of the security of that, and it's the same thing when you get your first gun. You're like, and you have to walk through a dodgy spot for the first time when you're carrying, and you're like, oh wow, this is a entirely different scenario than it would have been. And the more you can do that, especially with stuff simple as this, like you get separated from your family in whatever the awful situation is, having some plan in place. Think of the different world you're going to be living through where you're like, okay, I'm just going to go here or make this mark or whatever and let them know I'm good, but I don't necessarily have to have a phone or internet or electricity or whatever it is. So
you can even like leave a mark saying, hey, I stopped by here, I left to go somewhere else, I'll be back. Like just stuff like that. Like it I think Arizona and Canada both lost a lot of cell service a few weeks ago, and it's you can't rely on infrastructure.
I didn't know we lost some fucking cell stuff. I'm going up in the woods, so I'll be fine, but
it's just things like that. You're seeing Vegas run out of water.
Yeah,
a lot of bad things. But on the same note, you're seeing a lot of people starting to take steps to prepare for that, and that's a really big white pill, because the more people that are prepared, the less shock you'll feel from any crazy event. For example, like hurricanes, like if everyone had a generator and extra water, like very few people are going to start to rush the stores, which leaves more for the people who can't normally get to that stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you have surplus, your buddy's surplus, you could trade, barter, sell, whatever you have you. It just makes the community better off, right? Prepping and storing and all this kind of stuff. It's not necessarily a long-term final solution, but it definitely gives you a huge buffer to, you're basically buying time to make decisions. So if you have like a long-term event, like say Bosnia, Serbia, you can at least start to plan and make decisions rather than being forced to go to the store on day 2 of the balloon going up because you didn't have enough, I don't know, water.
Yeah. It's funny. The word you used a few moments ago was humbling, and you mentioning like it being a long-term thing. I think about it a lot, but I also generally my prepping is you're hoping for the short term, but like you might have to something might happen, and the final kind of solution to your situation is setting up a fucking farm because guess what? No more food is being produced. Like it's just done. Society is broken down to that point. It's on you guys, and you go. It's a wild fucking world, and obviously no one's in that perfect spot where they're prepared for every eventuality. But who knows?
And that takes us to the next step of realizing you can't necessarily do everything. You need a group and friends and a network of people. They don't even have to be friends. They could just be acquaintances, just knowing people and networking, right? It's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And if you know a lot of people and have good relationships with them, that opens you up to better opportunities in the future. So if you have the farmer down the street, maybe you don't know him like a best friend, but you're cordial and friendly with him. And his decision is sell my last cow to the guy who talks to me and lives down the street, or the guy who's just offering me money and will probably stab me in the back and kill me later, right? Who's he going to choose?
Yeah. No, seriously, community is one of the best tools in the prepper's kit. It's strange how there's been kind of for the longest time this culture of paranoia and being a hermit as a prepper, but it's like, dude, you need to take a note from the hippies and kind of commune it out a little bit.
Yeah, and you get guys with different skill sets, and that is a way of prepping in itself, right? Maybe you and I aren't mechanics, but we got a mechanic buddy, and we could trade something with him, or just out of the goodness of his own heart, he'll help us out with anything. That makes us better off. So those issues we can't take ourselves, now we have a subject matter expert or a guy who's capable of, in the areas we lack, take over when we need help.
Yeah. If you take anything away from this, it's get a Faraday bag, skill tree, and build community. just keep everyone. Oh, sorry. What?
And get it right in the rain.
Oh, yes, yes. Get it right in the rain. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. All right. So I thought we would wrap up with some questions.
Send it.
All right. Listener questions for this is like a not an art and war thing. This is a BR thing, but you guys are gonna have to deal with it. So someone asks, do you think USPSA has any value, or does it negatively affect shooting in real life? I don't. Do you shoot any kind of stuff like that?
No competitive, but I honestly say, why the hell not? I see no reason as to why it would hurt putting yourself under a time commitment to meet a score and really challenge your marksmanship when you're running around. Like, that's great, man. And plus, shooting is America's sport, so continue to push that over sports balls.
Yeah, yeah. Something that, I mean, Christ, people are even celebrating airsoft a lot more than they used to. There was like a full 180 on committing to that sport. Now it's like, well, I mean, obviously you're only shooting someone kind of less than under 100 feet away, but a hell of a lot of other stuff applies. So
yeah, what you're going to see in the future actually is more sport-related activities in this kind of realm. I say this, for example, there are UTM matches in Las Vegas, and I really see that taking off.
I think so. There's a market for it. There's a fucking massive market for it. You're going to get
so much with that. You could do it like paintball style. You could do like CQB style. You could do Rainbow Six Siege like style. Like, oh, you could have so much fun with that.
Oh yeah, I mean Europeans will be tuning in for that, not so. Yeah, that'll get big, especially with all of this. I don't know. The MLG shit got big. Why wouldn't we want to see people shoot each other in real life?
Exactly.
Someone else asks, who is Reaper's favorite historical guerrilla to read about?
Francis Marion. The reason is, I'll harp on him a lot, is because he took ethics into a place where there were no principles or ethics. What I mean by that is, in the Carolinas during the Revolutionary War, a lot of people were looking for revenge. You're seeing less states versus the English colonies and more brother versus brother, neighbor versus neighbors type stuff. Like, hey, you took my horse, so I'm going to burn down your house and kill your wife. And he basically came in and said, we're doing none of this. I will not tolerate it. I will punish anyone who does. And anyone he caught as not a spy, but like anyone he caught captured after a battle or anything, he would treat them very cordially, invite them to dinner, sit down with them, and then just send them on their way rather than scalping them and hanging them from a tree. He treated them like human beings, and basically he took away from his enemies, the Tories and the English, of the propaganda war of calling him like a monster or anything like that, because these guys fighting for the Tories or the English were being captured and seeing this guy for the first time who they were told was a monster and just killing and raping and pillaging, and he's like offering them the same food he's eating and just treating them like human beings, and it really takes away that weight from the propaganda war.
Damn, that I'm glad you answered that like that, because it reminded me of a question that I completely fucking missed, which was kind of something you spoke about recently, which was kind of the propaganda war from the insurgent or resistance side, or whatever the smaller forces, and kind of the role of combat photographers and videographers and all of that kind of content within an insurgency, which was really fascinating to me because it's kind of what I'm trying to do with my stuff. But I don't know, like what have you looked into in terms of kind of the history of that, or like any insurgencies or otherwise that have done that particularly well?
I'm really looking at it from the strategic perspective of what is done by different groups to rally different demographics. For example, like the difference between children and adults versus teens, and looking at how they recruit and essentially propagandize those different demographics, seeing how groups will commit different psychological operations against each other. One that sticks out for that in my head is in Iraq. This one leader was meeting with an American general, so this one intermediate party who didn't want that meeting to happen basically climbed up this tower and took pot shots at the general to make it look like the group that was meeting was just using it as an assassination attempt and causing this whole conundrum between the groups. And looking at how different institutions will do that. I mean, like, look at Ghost of Kiev. People are like, "Oh, this is so stupid." I'm like, you're missing the entire point. The entire point is to rally the people and create this air of disinformation to which Russian forces have to sort through, and it just creates a nuisance. And then seeing more things like that of just how do you convert different groups. I mean, you could look at it from a 3-part group. People who are totally against you no matter what you do whatsoever. People who are for or against you they don't really know yet. They need one over, and guys who are totally for you, and how you market the service or product you're offering, which is revolution, peace, stability, whatever have you, and how do you pitch it that your approach to that is the way to go, and that they should quote unquote buy your product, side with you. Basically looking at it like a marketer.
Yeah, no, seriously, like that being kind of, of all the skill sets I could have, and then also be interested in kind of the, the tactical and small unit tactics world. I've always considered it like 99% useless until kind of one, for my own purposes on my page, kind of doing quote unquote combat photography and showing a glimpse of what we do when we go out and do kind of, civilian rifleman style training and rucking and all the rest of it. And kind of being like, oh no, you can do this without signing up for the war machine. And, something as simple as that can change minds a hell of a lot better than just preaching at people. But then something else that I think I brought up commenting on your post was the fact that if someone does want to kick off something, like kind of of all the things that come to mind, the early ISIS days was their fucking videography campaign was brutal because they were filming everything they were doing, like every little gunfight and every little victory. It looked like they were just fucking crushing everything, even though I'm sure they had like awful casualties and stuff when there was resistance. But like, and obviously they swept through
the point.
The Afghans.
That is the absolute point. Like,
yeah.
We're like, well, it's not truthful. It's like, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, it doesn't fucking matter. It looks good, doesn't it?
You, right?
Yeah.
Part of the reason of propaganda is to make yourself look bigger and more prevalent than you actually are. If you have 10 guys, make it look like 1,000. Alternatively, you could look at it from the disinformation portion. If I have 1,000 guys, make it look like 10. Right? Have your enemy so he never knows what he's looking at.
That's some Sun Tzu right there, if I remember correctly. I love it. No, seriously, like, and if it's very early days in some kind of breakout, and you've got the active guys and the inactive guys who are like, they could be doing what the active guys are doing, but they're not ready yet. If you've got a small number of active guys really putting out that it's all kicking off, like this is the time, even though it's 50 guys or whatever, instead of the 1,000 they need, all of a sudden you might get that 1,000 from a bunch of enthusiastic people thinking it's kicked off.
Yeah, or they didn't know that there were other people like them out there, so they have a sense of identity and purpose. It's something they can belong to.
Yeah, that is fascinating to me, because obviously it's not just heroes and good guys practicing that. It's in every fucking war. There's an element of marketing, and like a really, really intense amount of marketing, actually. That every fucking war has to be marketed in some form or multiple ways, really. And I don't know, like your post really brought that to the forefront for me and kind of made me reanalyze even what I'm doing, because I know it's for, I'll say it on my page, it's propaganda, and it's meant to kind of incite a certain reaction to it and kind of get people to be more active. But no, very interesting to analyze it with that perspective.
Exactly. I mean, look at it garners more attention to certain topics that may not have been brought up before. But again, also gives guys that realization that they're not alone and they're looking for this information. They could share it with their buddies, and it starts to take off from there. And really, the goal is to not just have one hub, but basically you have this emergent organization where you have all these groups who are loosely networked with each other and coordinating, but not with some central head, which can be cut off, right? They've already gathered the information and they can spread it between each other.
Nice and decentralized.
Exactly.
As all good things in life are.
And you see that with different propaganda efforts. Look at, are you familiar with Juba?
Juba, I'm not. I don't think.
So Juba was a really big propaganda effort in Iraq. And I in no way condone his activities. I just want to make that clear, but this is just an analysis, right? Let's just be students of the game here.
Yeah.
It was viewed as one sniper who was video recording all these shots against soldiers and Marines. And for the longest time, it was believed it would be one guy. In reality, they shot two of these guys who were recording after they shot, and I think like a month later, another video comes out, and they realize this Juba guy wasn't one sniper. It was essentially a bunch of snipers following the original guy who was taking shots and recording. And now they also like basically just flew under the same name. So in reality, they had multiple guys doing this. And what it did for recruiting efforts was basically like triple the quota they needed per month during this campaign. And what you have is not only bringing guys into the fold, you're demoralizing because you have this big, huge army, and now they're not untouchable, right? These lowly dirt farmers can put a hole in them, and et cetera, et cetera. So you're addressing multiple fronts here and showing people that, like, hey, you know, we're Mr. Tally, we're in town, we'll be doing this, and announcing your presence. So you really got multiple different factors playing in there, addressing different audiences with the same media. And not only that, you're basically creating this virality effect of multiple people trying to do what you do, in quotes. And it's very interesting to look at that and see how it affected culture in America back home.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad that we're at a point where we can kind of everyone can be grown up and analyze this stuff from all over the place. Because holy shit, did we get our asses kicked? And if you're not learning from that, guess what? Americans gonna keep on fucking dying in fields for no good reason.
Yeah, you could look at books like Phantom Soldier, which is written towards the American military, like, you know, low level, you know, grunts and NCOs, and like telling them about how adversaries in East Asia will address American doctrine and habits. And basically, you have this guy, you know, writing all these books towards them, like, hey, like, you need to change what you do, or like what you were taught isn't necessarily applicable because your enemy has adapted, and the guys who were teaching you didn't. And like pushing books out like that, because as guys start learning, they might get more of that doctrinal based thought, which isn't bad for a foundation, right? But it might be misleading in the way to approach certain problems rather than using our creativity to approach them, and realizing there might be more than one way to skin a cat.
That is a good segue. More than one way to skin a cat. So someone asks, and this is something that I think of all people I've talked to, you're probably one of the better ones for it, because personally, I have not wanted to get too involved with getting people to meet other people, because that's a bit of a hornet's nest. But you've been kind of helping to facilitate groups getting together a little bit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And how, if I can be a little bit candid about it, how has that kind of gone? Have you had any kind of like worries doing it, or has it all been kind of a good experience with getting guys together?
I haven't heard really anything bad aside from like, hey, I met this one guy who was a little off, so like we just didn't meet again. Like that is the worst I've heard. Pretty much everything else has been super positive. Guys now are like, hey, we're hanging out with this group. We go to brunch every other Sunday, and it's great. And really just getting guys to not be so isolated, not for like anything militant or preparatory, like literally just getting friends.
Community.
Exactly. It could be really isolated out there, especially after you had the whole political conundrum last 2 years where everyone's at each other's throats. Like it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
It addresses the mental health aspect of it. For example, just like if 2 weeks ago I had guys in the Patreon Discord were like, oh, hey, 3 of us just found out like 5 minutes ago we're all in the same area. Like I never had anyone before. Now I have friends, and now they're hanging out all the time. It sucks seeing guys pursue this, and I know that they're not alone, right? Because I can see pretty much everything, right?
Yeah.
From top down, but they can't necessarily see that. And just realizing like, hey, there are guys out there who like want a friend who has their back. You can find it too. The big issue I see with it, aside from like the environmental effects, is the internal locus of control in some guys. Like it's just not there. They feel like they're helpless and there's no chance because they have this dimmer mentality. I'm like, no one's stopping you from doing anything on this planet. Like it's literally just you. Once you realize that you can do whatever you want, meet whoever you want, like and have that mentality towards things, like you're going to accomplish anything. So if you want to make friends and find them, if you build it, they will come. So be a pleasant person to be around. Don't be a weirdo. No one cares about your Funko Pop collection or whatever kids are into these days. Just be a normal human. Like, well, how do I know if I trust them? I'm like, if you would trust them around your family and your kids, that's when you know. If you wouldn't trust them around those people, like, it ain't it, Chief.
Yeah. Go out, do something chill, brunch sounds good.
Just hang out. My word. Why does it always have to be training? Like, just hang out.
Yeah. I mean, and if you do have to be a little bit autistic about it, then a chill range day where maybe we leave, certain components at home and everyone just gets on a level. Cool. If that's what you need to do so you don't feel, odd, maybe go and do that. Maybe go and clean up your local range or something. But no, it's.
And my God, if you do have that stuff, stop talking about it.
No, oh my God, the guys who DM me like a picture of it, and I'm like, I can see the serial number.
I don't need to see that.
See the serial number. Why would you fucking do that? God damn it! This is why I don't check my DMs.
I get it.
But no, I really love that you're doing that, man, because I've personally, like I said, I've been very hesitant to get involved with it because there's a lot of oddities that come with it and kind of risk with facilitation. But if you're going about it from a top-down, very sensible way of we're building community, guys just get together and that's why I chilled out a little bit doing this event down in Texas, Childerberg, and meeting people in real life that I've been talking to for years. I'm like, God, this is so much fucking better. Like, you're real people and maybe we can actually get some shit done in this life,
Exactly. It's just such a relief just to meet guys so you can talk to you can actually feel like you can be yourself.
Yeah.
In a world of interconnectivity, you think we'd have more of this, but it seems like we've just gotten more and more isolated, and it's really sad. It really is.
Something, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences. They've been a disaster. But
Teddy's my homie.
Ted. Cancer, man. Bless him. But a pause on that for an uncomfortably long moment. Have Mitch sweating. No, I'm not going to talk about Teddy anymore. Probably. Trying to see if there's anything good to wrap on. Someone called Rogel is asking for toe pics?
No feet pics for him. Absolutely not.
Oof. Sorry, buddy. I tried.
R.I.P.
I was trying to be a wingman there. Some of these are just awful.
Are they all asking for sexual favors?
I mean, kinda. Someone's asking where's the best place to shit your pants.
At your house, I guess.
So yeah. I mean, I guess the thinking there would be you can just ditch it and no one has to know, if it has to happen. But yeesh, man. All right, here's a good one. Here's a good one to wrap on. What is one avenue to get people into the community that hasn't been used by us? I mean, kind of a difficult one because surely we'd be doing it. But any thoughts?
Ooh, this is a good one. Initial thought, I pushed on this a little bit, is any public area you normally see like those stickers on, right? You see like the skateboard stickers, like the clothing stickers, all that random shit. Like light poles, mailboxes, any other public place, ski lifts, buses, stuff like that. Slap some gun stickers in there.
Yes.
Make it look common, right? Because it takes you no effort. You get 1,000 with every freaking thing you order, so you probably have like 20 sitting around, and like you can just slap them on stuff, right? Took you 3 seconds of your time, and if someone has to scrape it off, it takes about 10 minutes of theirs.
Yep. Beautiful guerrilla marketing at its finest.
Exactly.
You're just like, all right, you're my billboard now, motherfucker.
I don't know what the legal limitations of like firearms and gear manufacturing is, but typical marketing, I think, like getting like Magpul stuff, like even if it's like clothing like in there, or just like other brands who are gun related, maybe if they did like clothing lines, getting that kind of stuff out of there. That's what immediately comes to, like, imagine if Daniel Defense ran a separate company, Daniel Defense Clothing, right? It was a second legal company, but you ran it parallel with your organization and owned by your organization. I'm just using this example. Forget the Daniel Defense politics. It's just
I was like trying to come up with a joke while you were talking.
It's just an example, right? And
I'll leave it today, Daniel Defense.
And they pulled out like a NFL ad. Now it would get a ton of hysteria because eventually all those news organizations are going to catch on. But you're going to promote the shit out of it if you know that that's going to happen, and things like that. That immediately comes to my head. This is actually something I've been thinking about recently, and the sticker really was kind of the easiest one that came to my mind.
No, I'm a big proponent being a sticker salesman, but no, like if you, especially if you can design stuff yourself, like it's awesome to just print. Like we are living in a beautiful time where everyone can be a propagandist. You can design something with free software. You don't even have to be like a talented artist or anything. You can make something with just stock images and template shit, get 1,000 printed and go and slap them on every mailbox in the neighborhood, and get your schizo opinion out there with everyone else's.
I think maybe more rucking and getting out and people seeing things like, even if it's just like a workout plate carrier, that type of gear, and making it more normalized. Normalizing, like, I know it's a little cringe and not gray man, but like having the Molly stuff, like if that's more and more prevalent, like it just starts to blend in more and people get accustomed of it, and you basically just start taking ground an inch at a time.
Dude, I noticed such a stark difference as Eurotrash, in red and blue states, or whatever the case is with the politics, gun friendly versus anti-gun states. Like just seeing how people's vehicles look, how their clothes look. Like people are, out in the Southwest and most of the kind of freedom corridor, so-called freedom corridor, the better states. People are generally a lot more comfortable with, like, Molly as just kind of a fact of life on gear and bags and stuff. I've seen, hipsters with Molly on their packs. It's just like, it's not obscene here. Like it would be to look like, a guy that just fell through a 511 store in, I don't know, California or something. Everyone's gonna be like, what the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, and the goal of this marketing isn't necessarily to win them over in a day. It's just like, oh, cool, I got you into, say, like Vertex clothing, 511 clothing, or whatever, right? I've already just gained an inch on you, so now you're more open to other gear. Maybe you buy your backpack. Now you have the backpack, and maybe it's not like a 3-day pack, it's just an assault pack. And you say, oh, hey, maybe it'd be cool to have some things in here, like Band-Aids or something, because I needed those the other day. You put them in there, and you realize, well, maybe Band-Aids aren't enough for each scenario. So you start looking, and like you get into gauze, and then it starts snowballing, and now you have an IFAC in there, and now you realize, well, I have medical, so maybe I need defense, and that starts taking you down. You get your high point, realize it's a piece of shit, get yourself a Glock later down, and now you get this snowball effect of, it'll take like 5 years to fully come complete, but you've already started something. For example, here now, like I'm taking like people who are completely staunchly anti-firearm, and now they're like, hey, like I see, like I heard you shoot around here, I'd like to go with you sometime. And it's like, oh, this is awesome. Now you convert this person, they're like, oh wow, this would be really cool to defend my house with, and they're like, wow, all these laws are complete BS, and now you got someone who's completely in agreement with you, and now less likely to agree with anything that would be used against you force-wise to take your rights from you. And now you have an extra guy on your side. Instead of being -1 in the equation with someone standing against you, now you're +1. You got 2 guys now.
Yeah, one less neighbor to tell on you.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's something. I think Marauder Project, before he got the Zuck, R.I.P. He was talking about kind of normalizing kind of that militant appearance just amongst the population, and someone we recently went hiking on a public trail with rifles and kit and stuff, like, you know, and people, there was mixed reactions, mostly positive, which was cool, but it's still just a reminder that kind of, you know, like, and we were perfectly pleasant as we did it, you know, saying hi, stopping and talking to people if they wanted to, and just that kind of exposure in the culture is, I think, very underrated. People are far too shy about their lifestyle, I think, in this kind of space. And obviously, you know, don't be an obnoxious cunt about it. But like, some people really make a mess of kind of being a messenger for this stuff. But just
like if someone's going to completely disagree and start an argument, like just wish them well, smile,
yeah,
wave, and
yeah,
go on. Like think of it like customer service. You're representing the values and the brand you stand for. So if you have a negative interaction with someone, you're giving them a reason to not like you more and more, aside from just like your beliefs, right? You're being a dick, you're talking back, but talking emotionally. You're giving them more ammunition and confirming their beliefs, which rather than like you're just being positive and like uplifting and just like, hey, I appreciate you giving me that input, but not really my style. Have a good day, sir. Take care. That by not giving them in like ammunition and emotion back, right? You're staying on the level you want to be on and not going down to their level. You kind of make them look like an asshole if there's other people around.
yeah,
And
100%.
and then they're going to be thinking about the situation the rest of the day because humans are normally accustomed to getting emotional reactions back. And when you don't give that to them, it really flusters them and they get even angrier and realize they're an idiot.
Yeah, there's nothing better than getting cut off by someone with, you know, every blue sticker of the last 20 years. And then, you know, they give you the finger or whatever, and you can just give them a thumbs up, and they're just like, fuck, you denied me that. You denied me my getting off.
Yeah, play by your rules.
Yep.
Going on that Marauder thing, like wearing camo, you can think of something like wearing your chest rig on a hike. Maybe you want mags, maybe you don't. Doesn't really matter. Someone asks you what that is, you just say, "Oh, hey, look, I go navigating with this thing and out in the woods." And like, "Oh, that's really cool." And you're like, "Oh, and sometimes I shoot." And just throw that out there, and come up with a story for stuff like this. You can start to reel someone in rather than throwing them on like the mental blinders up, right? Because they hear like, "Oh, shooting, no, bad, shooting, bad." You could start to reel them in just a little closer before you throw that out there, and that way they listen to you just a little more.
Yeah, like, so this not concerned couple, but like a pair of ladies were just like, "Oh, you know, what you doing out here?" And our response was just like, "Oh, just weighing ourselves down a bit while, you know, handful of us are holding rifles and kit on this trail." And, you know, they were like, "Oh, cool," and simple as that. Like,
Yeah, just make it look like it's normal, and they'll
because it
come to your level.
Be. Yeah,
exactly. They'll come to your level, especially if you're like again super calm with it, super confident with it. You don't need to argue with them if they have a point. Maybe you don't have a counterpoint. Just be like, "Oh,
yeah, got a problem?" Like,
yeah,
that's not gonna do you anything.
yeah." You just say like, "Hey, thanks for your input," and just like don't give them the chance, and make it seem completely normal as it should be. And now you start to make them feel like they're weird, and that's uncomfortable. People don't like discomfort. Like you start to play all these mental games. If you really want to screw with them, you could do a couple things. You could look past their shoulder. They'll start to keep turning right there. That throws them off because they think something's behind them because you're looking past their shoulder, and you can completely gaslight them. You can look at their forehead and not give them really any emotional reaction back when they say things and just kind of nod. That makes people really unnerved. Or if it's like a guy, you can look at their lips and it makes them feel like you're sexually attracted to them. If that's it, like, you know, like dude on dude, two straight dudes like looking like that, it's gonna make him really like put off. Just some fun things you can do.
Psyops with Reaper. Interpersonal psyops with Reaper. Well, we're about coming up to an hour and a half, but was there anything else you want to touch on before we fuck off here?
Think through things like counter forensics. It's definitely good to look at yourself from a view of what kind of trace do I leave everywhere I go. It's not like a paranoid thing or like, hey, I'm gonna go take on the big bad government, right? Like not even that. Like just understanding how you interact with your environment and how it interacts with you, and all the complexities that goes in with everything, right? So, um, look at it this way, right? Non-state actors have forensic capabilities. That's scary if you have to take on an organization like that, right? Taking on some mafia or cartel, and now they're trying to hunt you down with a brass casing you left. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And understanding how that brass casing can identify you could help save you from, getting blood eagled in an overpass.
Sure as fuck, especially if you're a Mormon living down in Mexico.
Right?
Bless those poor fuckers.
Yeah, right.
But no, like aside from forensics and stuff, is there any other kind of niche topics or skill sets that you think is like something that might engage you but has largely been ignored by kind of the wider community?
I think looking at intelligence and tracking are both really good ones. Intelligence isn't hit on enough. I'm seeing it start to take off as guys realize they need information. Really, it's just been dominated by S2 Underground. But seeing more groups like that pop up, whether they go online or not, will definitely be super helpful because the basis of all action is intelligence, right? If you know there's a riot down the street, or if a well went out and that supplies all the city's water, that gives you more time to make decisions. On the other one, like I view tracking as just cool. Like it's something I really want to get into more, and just understanding again how you interact with like a natural or unnatural environment. What traces do you leave there? And you can track down animals, cool too, and figure out who's walking through your neck of the woods. It's just something I find interesting. It's kind of niche, but it's cool.
Well, I mean, if you're in a situation where you're out in the sticks and you need to know, what's happening in your area of operation, it's going to be critical to be a good tracker. So, for someone, it could be incredibly niche, and for someone else, it might be, day-to-day kind of habit they have to get into.
I think counter tracking though and anti tracking is definitely something everyone should know. Just base skills. It's one thing to have the skill to track someone. It's another to know that non-state actors, state actors, individuals with malintent will try to track you down if you pose a threat to them. And if you're running out in the sticks, they're going to send their best. So know how to buy yourself some time.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming on, man.
My pleasure.
It's been a hell of a conversation. We'll definitely have to get you back on. I think Nathan and Mitch will probably get you on, but this is like a cool. I don't know how this is going to come out being on both platforms. It should be interesting, but hijacking the show for a week. But no, thank you for doing it with me, man.
My pleasure.
All right, so where can we find you? And I also need to ask, where can we find kind of the place to go if you're trying to get in touch with other people in your area?
So you can find me on Instagram at Reaper. Let's see what the new tag is now. Reaper 1.1.actual. That'll be my main page. I have a backup at Reaper at the Reaper 1.1. But those are the two big places to reach me. Alternatively, not to plug myself, but to plug myself, I have a Patreon.
No, go for it, man.
Patreon, Reaper's Hide. You can find me on there. I repost everything there, as well as some content that's just a little too hot for the post Zuckerberg Instagram. Some things just can't really be on there, like spike traps and all that. So that goes into that platform. As far as the skill tree, you could find that in my story highlights, and it should be just a few posts down. So it's still pretty recent, pretty easy to find.
Wunderbar. All right, we will put that in the link below, both to your Patreon and Instagram. Oh, and before we go, we got to get some dad advice.
You are capable of so much more than you can imagine, and I mean that in a way of whenever you feel like you're about to quit and run out of energy, you're only 40% expended. I was told that by a Navy SEAL when I was younger, and I never believed it till I went through cancer my second time, and I realized that the body will keep going on long and long after you feel like you should have quit. Basically, you are out of gas when you are knocked out or dead. That's it. If not, you're still in the fight.
Fuck yeah. That's I don't know if you're a dad currently or plan on being in the future, but I think you're gonna knock it out of the park, man.
I appreciate that, brother.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and okay, bye. Thanks for listening, guys. If you like this flavor of show, be sure to keep up with me on Instagram at br.the.anarch, anarchist without the IST. We'll be back next week with the usual On War podcast, but if you like this episode, be sure to follow my show on your podcatcher of choice by searching for the B.R Hates Feds Show. We'll be back with regular On War next week, with some great shows coming up, with Mitch talking to Blue Jean Operator, and Nathan been mag dumping into trash stateside with Print Shoot Repeat, and I'm pretty sure they got a recording in somewhere amidst that. Alright, for real this time, okay, bye.